it is even better than it was pitched, and it is even more complicated and fun and interesting and playful than I could have ever imagined this job being.
I got a call from Kevin saying, could he come in and see me at Marvel? And I went, oh, I'm getting the can.
We're done with you.
I'm getting the can, and he's going to be nice and generous and sweet about it. But I'm getting. And then he pitched this totally bonkers TV show.
I've always been hungry to lean into the comic book stories that we're leaning into in this show, and I didn't know if I'd have the opportunity to explore it, which is the reason why I wanted to be a part of the Avengers to begin with. When Joss asked me to, he said, look at these comics and tell me if you are interested. And those specific comics are the ones that Feige said, this is what our show is going to be about for WandaVision.
It's twilight time.
Wanda and Vision, aren't we a five-pair?
This is our home now. I want us to fit in.
Oh, this is gonna be a gas!
Our content is so different than Marvel. It's like a conversation of American sitcom through the decades with Marvel film, and they're constantly in dialogue with one another. So it's been really fun and different.
Where did you two move from? How long have you been married, and why don't you have children yet?
Our story.
I think what my wife means to say is that we moved from...
Moved from where? Married when? Damn it, why?
Oh, Arthur, stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
I really loved filming the 70s, specifically because of the content.
Yep.
It was like the most Lucy I went in this series. That was actually the only time Matt Shackman told me I was too much.
This is really happening.
Like days of old, lighting the spark of love that fills me.
Am I dead?
No. Why would you think that?
Because you are.
I think the thing that I've loved most about working with Paul specifically in this situation is, even though Paul was painted red and in other movies, and we've had to do really ridiculous things in reality of like blowing up something in his head while there is a Josh Brolin in a onesie with a hockey glove on. Like, there's a lot of crazy imaginative things we've had to do together. But I think Paul and we both have these inner children that met on this show.
That's right. Some outrage, never, not one moment undersold.
It's been fun. Sitcoms are fun.
Each day I pray for evening just to be.
We are an unusual couple, you know.
Oh, I don't think that was ever in question.
I'm so excited now that we've cracked open this other part of her, so that there hopefully could be more stories to tell.
And what I love about the show is, as mad as that trailer that I'm sure you've seen is, it's actually a really elegantly put together puzzle piece. I think, you know, when everything, as bonkers as it looks, everything will make sense.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This is going to be my new WandaVision, X-Men, Avengers video. Marvel just posted this big preview, so we'll break it down and explain what they said about the X-Men of it all and how this is crossing over with Doctor Strange 2. If you're new to the channel, we're doing a giveaway for Disney Plus memberships. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and let me know everything you want them to do with X-Men during Marvel Phase 4. Starting with the big stuff first, they're doing new backstory in the episodes for Scarlet Witch, and Elizabeth Olsen obviously talking about all the most famous Scarlet Witch X-Men comics that they're finally doing on the show, like House of M. Some of you may remember that a couple of years ago, during the Avengers Infinity War premiere, she said that she would love to do a House of M storyline at some point, but that was probably before Kevin Feige gave her the call that they were going to do that story on WandaVision. They even focus on that House of M wine bottle in the trailer for a good couple seconds. Maison du Mépris means House of Contempt, House of M, as you see the M on the wine bottle. But they will also be doing more history for her, more backstory before Avengers Age of Ultron, getting her powers, and Quicksilver getting his powers with the Mind Stone, what her life in Sokovia was like, and further back as a way to help sort of recon or fold in all the X-Men character history from the comics. This is where you get to questions like, how can Magneto be her father if her parents were killed by Iron Man's Stark Tech weaponry in Sokovia? That was their whole motivation in Avengers Age of Ultron, the reason why they were working with Baron von Strucker. We hate Tony Stark and the Avengers. Even though he doesn't appear with them during this footage, Kevin Feige was there with them doing this same interview talking about the series. He's already implied that they're kind of retconning Scarlet Witch as a mutant in the MCU, even though they've implied that before, and there have been some tie-in canonical books that have described her as a mutant, but they had the rights issue with Fox, so that was the big reason why you've never heard anyone say the word mutant in an MCU film, at least so far. Obviously that's different now because they can do whatever they want. They have all the X-Men characters back. The way that Kevin Feige also talked about her during the series is that we'll find out the full extent of her powers and why she's called the Scarlet Witch in the comics. That implies larger chaos magic, which obviously gets into big Doctor Strange 2 stuff. I'll talk about that in a second as well, because during this interview, Kevin Feige was also hyping up how they're using the series to directly set up Doctor Strange 2 and cross over with it. But a lot of you eagle-eyed viewers have also spotted some larger Marvel Phase 4 Easter eggs in terms of new X-Men and Fantastic Four crossover characters and connections that they've been setting up, and some of those will also help explain some of these retcons and the way they fold in the X-Men characters. It'll happen in a number of different ways. There won't be one blanket explainer for X-Men in the MCU. Right now, the way that Kevin Feige talks about it is he just refers to them all as mutants. So there are a lot of different kinds of mutants. Then you have your core X-Men characters. So when you're talking about X-Men characters, you're typically talking about the biggest ones like Professor X, Magneto, Wolverine, Cyclops, Storm, all the core X-Men team members. Mutants is just a broader blanket term that you can use to talk about Deadpool in conjunction with all this too. He's a good example of a character who's a mutant, but not necessarily an X-Men character in the traditional sense. The other really cool thing that Elizabeth Olsen reveals during this is doing more Scarlet Witch movies in WandaVision potentially in the future after this. She says WandaVision Season 1 opens up the possibility of new stories set after the events of the series, and obviously that includes the events of Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness, but she's also talking about other stories beyond that. The way that Kevin Feige initially pitched WandaVision, he made it sound like it was only going to be one season, but that they were using it to set up all this big Marvel Phase 4 multiverse stuff and practically kind of learn how to make the shows the way they make the movies behind the scenes. But now it sounds like Elizabeth Olsen is actually jazzed to come back as Scarlet Witch in other movies and crossover. So I think obviously that means Avengers 5, because she's already one of the most powerful characters in the MCU right now before the events of WandaVision, and if she's going to get a big power upgrade with her chaos magic during the events of the series, then think about how powerful she's going to be by the time we get to Avengers 5. And you have all the connections to the new X-Men movies. If you're using her at the beginning of Marvel Phase 4 to set up the concept of mutants in the MCU, wouldn't you also then bring her back for cameos in some of those mutant-based movies like the rebooted X-Men MCU movies? There were a couple new scenes that they dropped during that preview, most of them from the black and white episode. The way they talk about it, I'm assuming that's just WandaVision Episode 1, the 1950s-looking one. They said that they only filmed one episode in front of a live studio audience, like the Dick Van Dyke series. They filmed it with old school TV cameras and technology like they used back during the day as well. They said because of the way the cameras worked, they actually had to paint Paul Bettany blue, so there was a blue version of Vision walking around the set when they were doing the black and white stuff. The showrunner said that they were going for Dick Van Dyke Show references, Bewitched, obviously like we see during the trailer. I think most people picked up on the Bewitched references. Father Knows Best, The Partridge Family, just amongst many, many other sitcoms that they were referencing. I laughed so hard when I saw this picture of Vision and Scarlet Witch in the twin beds. This is a Dick Van Dyke reference, but the fact you zoom in and enhance on Vision here, he's got his full Avengers costume on, all the makeup, everything, even the Mind Stone in his forehead, but he's got that funny looking sleep mask over his eyes. When Kevin Feige was hyping up the Doctor Strange 2 crossover, the really interesting thing I think a lot of people haven't talked about yet is the title, Multiverse of Madness. So the term madness obviously implies things are going to be really chaotic and Scarlet Witch is going to play a role in setting that off. But if they're going for so many House of M Easter eggs and her losing her mind, going mad, so to speak, madness in the title is also a reference to her own psychological state, her madness, when she went full House of M. So don't be surprised if they end WandaVision on some crazy cliffhanger House of M style moment, but everyone post all your theories in the comments. They keep reiterating that they're going to try and drop the series before the end of the year, but no definitive release date yet, just because they're still racing through post-production. They finished filming last week, so hopefully at some point before Thanksgiving, they'll release the next WandaVision trailer, and then they'll just put the release date in that trailer. My brand new Mandalorian Season 2 Episode 3 video will post on Friday just like normal, so while you wait for everything, click here to rewatch that crazy WandaVision trailer with all the X-Men Easter eggs, and click here for my brand new Mandalorian Season 2 Episode 2 video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, I'll see you guys tonight.